And Broadridge has a unique position in the bond market. They're the trusted back office for 40 of the major bond dealers around the world, and as such processes 7 trillion a day, 8 trillion a day in fixed income securities. So Broadridge has this unique position both as a trusted vendor, but really for a lot of the large banks, it's the only outside vendor in the world that really understands every single trade that that dealer does. And so one of the ideas is as Broadridge thinks about how to extend its relationship with its banks, is how can we help take that data and make the traders and the salespeople in the front office smarter around that data and potentially create a platform to help the dealer do more business with their clients. Rather than putting dealers in comp, this has been viewed by Broadridge as a way to provide services and technology to allow the dealer to do more business with their existing customer base. So a very fundamental different view than how the other platforms were started.
Okay, so what does the RFX protocol consist of? What are its component technologies?
So, it's kind of interesting, RFQ way back when was kind of really designed to, frankly, automate a treasury bond trade where you call up a bunch of dealers, you ask them to bid or offer some treasuries, you get 3 quotes, you pick the best quote and you're done. That was the genesis of RFQ, if you will. When you think about, trading larger blocks of bonds, and especially in corporates who are more liquid, where you may not need one buyer, you may need several buyers on that trade to provide the ultimate liquidity. As we talked to many of the buy side participants, they said, look, RFQ is great for trades 2-3 million and less, but as the trades grow in size, we need things that RFQ doesn't allow for today, right? We need the ability to bid for the amount we want, not the amount being sold, so that, I can participate in trades where, if there's 12 million for sale, but I want 5, I can bid for 5. And the dealer can aggregate my 5 with your 7 and do a trade. So things like that, things like the ability, one of the other things we heard was, why can't I price improve? In RFQ, it's a very stagnant protocol. I bid once, they pick a price. I don't have the ability to see other prices. I don't have the ability to improve my price. Well, what in many other markets, usually you have the ability to see prices and improve. And so how can I have the right flexibility to create price improvement? Because at the end of the day, why does liquidity form around certain platforms? They form around certain platforms where you got the protocol that gives you more flexibility to do things the way you need to do them or would like to do them. And that's what we tried to do as we built out RFQ. We need the ability to get best execution, because at the end of the day, how am I judged whether I use, LTX or another platform or something over the phone? It's my sense that whatever I choose at the end of the day will give me the best ultimate price, the best execution. And obviously a platform that allows for price improvement, not just a price, but price improvement and also aggregating liquidity are 2 new powerful tenets that we think, in the future will be a real game changer.
Mm-hmm. And I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, but how does corporate bond trading work now?
So the market is kind of divided into a couple of different cohorts or components depending on the type of bond, right? So obviously small trades under 2 million have gone basically electronic. Trades above that amount tend to trade over the phone with one or a couple of dealers, depending on, if the bond is very well known and very liquid. I can get a streaming price from a dealer because there's enough liquidity to make a market. Mm-hmm. But given the size, and this is the spot we're focused on, right? We didn't build LTX to compete with the other existing platforms. We built LTX to compete and offer a solution for the banks to service their clients better in the less liquid, larger block trades, right? That was our focus. That's back to that 70% that's nobody's really tapped into. Mm-hmm. And it's really in that market where more often than not, either 2 things happen. The dealer will take down a block of bonds or bid on a bond, a sector of bonds. and or work an order. In a working an order, they agree to, the price or the spread, and then they call their customer base and try to place the bonds with the end natural buyer. And that's really the workflow we've now bring on to the screens of LTX to help the dealer do that more electronically with their clients and kind of old school over the phone.
Mm-hmm. And there is like an interactive aspect, right? For RFX.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the other thing. Everything is very interactive. The client can say, I want to do this. The dealer can say they want to do that. The dealer can take down and buy a bunch of bonds. They can work an order and distribute it to their clients. It's very flexible. I think that's the other thing. I mean, I could talk for 2 hours and explain all the different variations of LTX because the protocol is that flexible, and it was designed that way so that the trader, the bond dealer, and their client could do the trade that needed to be done the way they wanted to do it at that given moment. So it's not a very fixed and narrow thing. It's very flexible.
And what made you think that corporate bond trading would be a good candidate for AI technologies?
Well, when you think about the hundreds of thousands of CUSIPs out there and the different credit curves, the real challenge is, understanding liquidity, where AI can come in and think about, is there liquidity on this bond? And liquidity is like a three-dimensional problem. It's the bond itself, it's the price you're willing to buy or sell it at, and the amount, right? It's a multivariable kind of equation, and using AI to think about, well, what's the probability I could get this bond done at this point in time leads to great pre-trade signaling and technology, and that's one use case. The other thing that traders and salespeople do all day, right, is dealers have these vast customer networks, hundreds and hundreds of institutional investors. Let's call it 1,000. Well, how do you, across that 1,000 clients, over 6 months of activity, understand and keep track of who's buying and selling what, who are the natural buyers on any trade that comes in? Because as a dealer, one of your main jobs is to optimize this customer network to provide liquidity between clients. And that AI, we created a very powerful recommendation engine that allows any trader, any salesperson to tap into and know for any given bond, who are the natural counterparties for that dealer's customer base.
When did it become clear that Bernstein wanted to use RFX for corporate bond trading, or to try it out?
Well, Bernstein is, there's many different buy-side accounts, and they've all got different strategies, and some are early adopters, some are, what I call fast followers. They like technology, but they want to see others use it first. Bernstein has always been a great innovator in the space, and one that when they see something, they want to embrace it and bring it to market and help those platforms come to market. So they've been a great partner of ours, and they recognize, one of the things that hasn't been solved for yet in the bond market is the ability to do electronically a larger corporate bond trade with one of their existing dealers and help that dealer bring in multiple clients to provide that liquidity to that bond trade. And that's really one of the things that happens on the phone that now we've electronified. And so they embraced that, and they've been a great supporter of it.
And then how long was the implementation process, from the moment that the firm reached out to you? And then,
it was about 4 to 5 weeks. That's about it, once they've signed the docs.
Okay. And then how do the partners, or participants, I should say, how did it happen? Do they have to also have the RFX and LTX technology, or do they access things in another way?
So there are a couple of different paths. One way is if the customer, the dealer, is on LTX, they will get notified that the dealer's running a transaction, an RFX session, and they'll get invited to it, and then they can see and do whatever they need to do. Okay. Because this is about helping that dealer do more business with their clients, we look at the traders, we look at the salespeople, now to the clients, and we link everybody together. And that's really important because we want the salesperson to have a very important role in the trades. We're not trying to disintermediate them. We're actually trying to empower them. And they have the ability on any particular trade to reach out to their own clients directly, get feedback, get input, and if necessary, bid on behalf of clients that don't have our technology. So they're an important part of the puzzle as well.
Okay. So that's interesting. You talked about how does this process though help people access liquidity faster than, as you noted, than just using the phones?
Well, in kind of the current view of the world, right? A trade, a dealer may be in touch with 10, 20 million of a bond. They know what level, and they use their hoot and holler in this virtual world, right? The Zoom that's always on all day long. And they say, I got 20 million bonds I'm in touch with at this level. And then everybody, calls the relevant accounts, and it's kind of first come, first serve. And whoever takes them first, that's it. In our world, or our in our platform, we electronify that process. But in doing so, we allow for price improvement and aggregation of liquidity, right? So again, I can see there's 20 million. They, in one click, they recommend and invite 50 clients with one click, including the salespeople. So instantaneously, everybody's kind of invited to the same opportunity on a much faster, more efficient basis. The clients can then determine whether they are interested in the bond, whether they want to bid, and at what level. And because it's a price, size, time protocol, the clients who want to buy the most are on top. But what's really interesting is that, in an old world, if you're done and you get filled, there was no ability for any type of the market to say, what, you could actually sell more there, or you could sell at a tighter level. And here we allow for that price discovery, as I call it, and price improvement, as I call it, which, if you think about it, exists in many markets, but really doesn't exist in this kind of phone protocol that we do today. So, we obviously provide that same phone protocol, but we also allow the dealer to go to the next level if that's what the client wants.
And then Helby here, how long does that take? I assume it's happening really fast.
Yeah, I mean, it could take, that's the other thing about our flexibility. We don't dictate time. So if a trader and a client want to run this trade for a minute, that's great. If they want to run it for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or even half a day because of what's going on in the market and the illiquidity, it's up to them to decide. We don't dictate anything about how to use it. We provide a platform that hopefully gives the flexibility so they can do more business smarter and faster.
Okay. And we mentioned the liquidity issue. What are some other things that might get some of these traders off their phones and into automation?
Well, it's kind of like everything, right? I remember when, my BlackBerry, I thought I couldn't live without my BlackBerry. And, and then everybody started talking about smartphones. And sure enough, one day I kind of, traded in my BlackBerry for a smartphone. I think as innovation and technology marches along, we all realize that there's, as things come along that help us make us smarter, do things in a more intelligent way that maybe had been fine before, but now there's a better solution. That's kind of how I look about, what we're doing is we're using AI to make people smarter in the way they can't today. Again, back to the kind of the BlackBerry versus smartphone analogy. And then we created a more advanced protocol that allows them to trade and do different things above and beyond what they could or couldn't do on RFQ.
So what was the most important thing that you learned from the Alliance Bernstein experience?
Well, it sounds so simple, but you can have 4 or 5 buyers provide liquidity to one seller. Right? If you think about, in the world of electronic trading and providing liquidity, there's other platforms that talk about all to all. I mean, when you really dissect all to all in that case, it's 1-to-1. There's one buyer and one seller. So all sounds great, but when you really look at it, there's one buyer and one seller. There's not a bunch of counterparties providing liquidity to the other side. And I think as market structures advance and protocols advance, you need that ability to aggregate liquidity, not just, find one-to-one.
Okay. So what's next for LTX? Any news that you want to give us today?
I mean, we're in the soft launch phase, and we have a lot of interest from a lot of the asset managers, and we're continue to stitch together the network effect, because to go to the next network, the next level of liquidity for our platform, we need to have the right mix of buyers and sellers and asset managers and dealers. And we're at 50 to 60 right now. We'd like to get up to 100 in the net, by early fall. And then really kind of light it up, in terms of a lot more trading and liquidity. So that's where we are in our journey. I will say that, we've been pleasantly surprised with the feedback, and hey, we'd like to think about, potentially using this for other asset classes beyond US credit, but this is where we're starting, and we got to get our critical mass there before going and thinking about other things. But that's all part of the mission down the road.
Okay, and you did at the very start mention the post-trade offerings from Broadridge. So are there some natural links to some post-trade offerings, or is that also part of this soft launch and movement forward?
Well, I mean, again, every trade you do on LTX, to the extent that the dealer uses our post-trade services, automatically feeds into those systems.
Okay.
And again, we're, when you think about it, we're in this very trusted, unique position where, other than the bank themselves, we're the only other party with their permission that can help them think and use the data to help them be smarter and trade and do even more business with their existing clients. And that's really our mission.
Okay. And does some of that data feed back into the AI that is a part of RFX?
All of it does, yes.
Okay.
Every trade they've done, every trade on LTX, it's a virtual feedback loop that's always, in motion. The more trading you do on the platform, and this is the other thing, it's not just trades that are completed, but trades that customers wanted to do but didn't get done, right? That's just as valuable. If you think about, well, I was trying to buy this bond, but I didn't get any. Okay, well, maybe the dealer can take that information and try to create a new trade where you do have that opportunity to buy those bonds again.
And then is it part of the plan that LTX will then share that information with everyone who takes part?
We view information security very, very tightly. So your activity is only ever viewed by yourself.
Okay.
It's never shared. It's never disclosed. It's within
right,
the confines of how that
works. Would be a problem if that
yeah,
was shared with
exactly.
everyone. Yeah. All right, great. I know you're a busy man, so thank you very much for your time today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
And we're going to also archive this and make it available to people, afterwards.
Great.
So thank you. Thank you everyone
Great.
for tuning in. Thank you.